Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. Peter, right way back in March of this year, the great fanfare, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants against President Putin, as well as Russia's Child Welfare Commissioner, or whatever her title is. And this was, of course, triumphantly emblazoned by the ICC. You remember the ICC, which is still yet to do anything when it comes to Palestine at all, at any time, because supposedly Palestine had accepted ICC jurisdiction in 2015. So given that, of course, Israel doesn't accept it, but Palestine does, which means the ICC has jurisdiction. That's 2015. And all these years, the ICC has done nothing. Yet when it came to Russia, it moved.
The last time we heard something from them when it came to Palestine is that, I'm paraphrasing, it might be worth looking into.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And
might be.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe. And Karim Khan, the ICC chief prosecutor, went to the Rafah crossing. And he did what he always does. He makes long, pompous, self-satisfied, self-congratulatory speeches about never again. We have this responsibility of humanity. We have to look at all the horrific perpetrators of terrible crimes, blah, 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 blah. And of course, he did nothing very much about it.
He hopped into his minivan, which was nicely air-conditioned, I'm sure.
Exactly. So basically, nothing. But when it comes to this, they moved, which was very strange because they'd had no real opportunity to conduct any kind of investigation. They just simply took for granted whatever the Ukrainian interlocutors told them. So the Washington Post has just published a very, very long article,
as they do,
claiming that now the ICC is really building its case against Russia, and they base this article on a number of interviews with these supposed children who had been abducted by Russia. And but when you read this up, when you finally get through it, you realize that really there isn't much of a case here. And so I want to just show you some highlights from this article. And here we have, this is first of all from Karim Khan's statement. This is a statement that Karim Khan issued when the arrest warrant was published. It said, on the basis of evidence collected and analyzed by my office pursuant to its independent investigation, the pre-trial tribunal has confirmed that there are reasonable grounds to believe that President Putin and Ms. Belova bear criminal responsibility for the unlawful deportation and transfer of Ukrainian children from occupied areas of Ukraine to the Russian Federation. So that's the ICC claim.
Well, George, it's kind of important for me, at least, and I think for our viewers. When are these alleged abductions? When did they take place?
Well, I think that they claim that it's from the beginning, from the very start of the.
Well, but see, the problem with that is that Russia recognized these places as Russian sovereignty. So
right. No, that's right. But of course, the ICC doesn't. So
okay,
yeah. But that you're right.
Well, let's bear that in mind as we go.
Right.
No,
I mean, no question. So here's the Washington Post. Russia held these Ukrainian teens captive. Their testimonies could be used against Putin. So the Washington Post, as ever, helping out the ICC. Hey guys, would you like us to take some depositions of this?
The ICC's little helper.
Exactly. And so they start off with the 17-year-old Rostislav Lavrov. Is one of 3 Ukrainian teenagers who fled Russia or Russian-occupied Crimea this summer and shared their experiences with the Washington Post in lengthy interviews. Then they said they each described systematic efforts by Russian officials to keep them in Russian-controlled territory. And then Ukraine says there are thousands of Ukrainian children like Lavrov who were forced to move to Russia or Russian-occupied territory, including Crimea, since Russia's February 2022 invasion. And then what makes Lavrov exceptional is that he got out carrying with him memories of his experience that could one day be used in court to prove Russia committed war crimes by relocating children. And then he says about this indictment, and then accounts from teenagers contradict the Russian narrative that Ukrainian children are finding safety and happiness in Russia. They also pose an immense legal and political threat to Putin, Lvova Belova, and other Russian officials. Well, I mean, they're not really. I mean, if Russia doesn't recognize the court and doesn't take the, they pose no threat.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean, this is like putting, dramatic music behind these words. It just ends up being nonsense. It's white air.
That's right. That's right. And then it says, Ukraine intends to use their testimony as evidence that Russia is systematic, blah, blah. Facing immense pressure over the issue of missing children, Russia recently relented in several cases, allowing a few children to return to Ukraine. So now they start having to admit, well, actually, they're returning to Ukraine.
So their abduction status has come to an end?
Exactly. I mean, the whole point of abduction is you don't just sort of volunteer to go home. I think I prefer to go home if that's all right. And so,
well, I mean, they when we use terms like abduction, it brings to mind a certain process, something along the lines of kidnapping. And if someone is taken, then you need to remedy the taking. Right. You want something in return. Where is that? Maybe you're going to come to it in the article.
Well, that's it. Well, the return. Well, they never really spell out what the return is. Presumably, they just want to Russify and denude these people of their Ukrainian culture and heritage. Though that's never really spelled out, because the Russians say, well, we're removing people from a war zone.
Oh, I'm sure that's mentioned in the article, right?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
but that's the point. Is it preferable to have leave children in a war zone? I mean, is that a good idea? Basic children who can't defend themselves, let's just leave them in a war zone.
And everyone, these are minors, all right? They're minors, okay? Right. And I think that I don't want to, there's a punchline here coming. I'm not going to expose it yet. I'm going to let George do it, okay?
Right. And then it says, among them was 17-year-old Bogdan Ermokhin, a Ukrainian orphan from Mariupol who was relocated in Russia and then issued a Russian passport, which Russia said he voluntarily accepted. So he's an orphan. So you start off that he's in Mariupol, okay?
Which we know what happened in Mariupol. So
exactly.
So so Russian officials they want to see orphans abandoned,
right?
Or maybe they don't.
Right. So 17, and he's an orphan. Not a happy state to be in. His Ukrainian lawyer said that while living in Russia, he then received summonses to register with a Russian military office, a request Russia described as standard for all boys with Russian citizenship who turn 18 in the country. So again, that's that. And in fact, in this article, there's no indication that they were being coerced to join the Russian military. So, well, now you're 18, off you go in the military.
Being summoned to register is not being drafted.
Right.
All right. Let's be clear about that.
Right. And then it says, Russia insists that it is protecting children, adhering to the law, and helping families reunite when possible. In Ermokhin's case, Lvova Belova said in a statement that Russian troops found him neglected in Mariupol in 2022 and placed him in the care of a Russian family. And then Ukrainian Ombudsman Dmitry Lubinets, whose office is responsible for negotiating children's return to Ukraine, said Ukraine did not recognize Ermokhin's Russian passport. And then the Washington Post could not reach Yermokin directly for comment on his case. But notice it says, whose office is responsible for negotiating children's returns to Ukraine.
This sounds like a Gaza-Israel story.
Right. I mean, if they've been abducted, how come there's an office, negotiating the return?
And also, George, we have to keep people, remind people, and I think this is kind of the case in Hungary as well. But in Russia, you have to have papers. You just have to have papers, okay? Yeah. So, I mean, so this young man here, Dmytro, do you have a birth certificate? No, it was destroyed. Is there a registry that we can find out who you are? Okay, right. No, that was destroyed too. Did your parents ever give you? No, I never got anything from them. Well, you have to have some kind of status. Right. Okay. So is Russia going to bestow Ukrainian documents to this kid?
Right. No,
they're not going to do it. Okay. The point is, you have to have walking papers, everyone.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's the thing. So you get a passport. Well, that opens a lot of doors for you. I mean, that's a good thing to have. I mean, if they say no, you can't have a passport, then you have a problem because there's all sorts of benefits that you
probably can't even buy a train ticket without it.
Right, exactly. So they say, well, this is they suggest this is a horrible nightmare. They're offering him a passport, but it just opens doors for you when you're there.
I can't tell from the text because they don't make a clear distinction, but Russians have two sets of documents for a domestic passport. That's where you always have to be carrying it. And then obviously you need an international passport where you get visas and you can travel. I am assuming from the way it's being written that this Russian passport is a domestic papers. Okay. Which, like I said, everyone, you can't walk around without them. You have to have them.
Right. Well, that's right. After intense diplomatic negotiations, Yermokin returned to Ukraine via Belarus on his 18th birthday, escaping the prospect of one day being conscripted to fight against his own country. But again, this is just simply, this is Washington Post speculating. There's no indication that he was under threat of being conscripted to fight against his own country.
Well, there's no evidence being presented here. Now, as a legal point, yes, when you turn 18-year-old men have to register with the draft authorities, and then maybe they might or might not be. So that's not a imminent threat.
That's not an imminent, but I think in his case, I would think it's probably quite unlikely that he would be drafted to the front. I mean, it seems on the face of it unlikely, given where he came from and so on. But either way, there's no indication. There's no indication that he was being threatened and anyone was telling him, hey, you're going to be drafted and you're going to be sent to the front.
Well, there's very little. Of course, you have the fear mongers in Russia. The people that listen to Radio Free Europe and stuff like that. There are claims that guys are being forced into the military. Living here, I haven't seen anything remotely resembling that. Okay, and of course, this is kind of pulling at your heartstrings, George. Right. Right. Escaping the prospect one day of being conscripted and to fight against his, they're putting a lot of drama here. But the thing is I'd like to know where he is right now. Has he been conscripted into the Ukrainian army?
No, I'm sorry. Was never. No, that was it. He's gone. He's now in. I think it said it right before that.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's right. So the who said found him, placed him in the care. Ukrainian whose office responsible negotiators said Ukraine did not recognize the Washington Post could not reach on his case. Did it mention the previous? I thought
no, they didn't.
Well, here's among the 17-year-old Yermokin, blah blah, which Russia said he's Ukrainian, so that while living in he then received summons to register a request. Okay, yeah, okay, right. But I think it is spelled out later that he's back. I mean, he's now in Ukraine.
Yes.
Anyway,
so then he was interviewed in Kiev.
Exactly. Yeah. And then says said, here it is. After intense diplomatic negotiations, Ermokin returned to Ukraine via Belarus on his 18th birthday, escaping the prospect. Okay. That same fate was among Lavrov's fears while stuck in Crimea with his own 18th birthday quickly approaching. Securing Ermokin's release was one of the hardest cases of the war so far, Lubinets said, adding that Ermokin's willingness to tell Russian officials he wanted to go home, despite the risks, made him a, quote, hero. But, I mean, he returned. He says he returned after intense diplomatic negotiations. Well, the negotiations are a bit of a problem because he's an orphan. So they had to presumably work out somebody as to who is this person's legal guardian and with whom to negotiate.
So once he became 18, he's a legal adult. That's exactly why they let him go. You want to go? Go.
That's right. Exactly. He returned to you on his 18th birthday. Exactly. So they did on his 18th birthday. So in other words, he can just do it. That's exactly right. And then it says, the ombudsman said he hopes publicity around Ermokin's case could encourage other Ukrainian children in Russia to speak up and find their way back to Ukraine.
Okay, well, okay. Again, we have to parse words here, okay? It's my understanding that most of these Ukrainian children are ethnic Russians, okay? That's my understanding. Maybe not all of them. That's one of the reasons why we have this conflict in Ukraine, because it is not 100% Russian, not 100% Ukrainian. It's a lot of mixed in.
Right, exactly. Each child Lubinets's office has gotten out of Russia required its own operation, he said. Hundreds of other children have found their way home through other more discreet efforts, including missions supported by Save Ukraine, a Kiev-based organization, which has helped parents and guardians travel to Russia to retrieve their children. But you see, when you read this, you say, well, where's the war crime? I mean, you said there's a war crime. They say they're negotiating, and we got parents, guardians, and they're coming there, picking them up. I mean,
they're visiting the enemy country. Okay, they land at the airport. They take a taxi to this office. They have the documents. They would never say thank you for taking care of our child, because that's not what this news outlet wants to hear. But oh yes, by the way, yep, we got him. We'll match him up. Okay, let's get you out of here.
Right. Exactly. That's right. And so Kiev, which has helped parents and guardians travel to Russia to retrieve their children. One such Save Ukraine mission helped Lavrov's close friend, Denis Berezhny, who is from Kherson City, get out of Crimea several months ago. Berezhny was studying to become a locksmith when Russia occupied his hometown last year. Then in October 22, his school director told him and other students that they would be required to attend camp in Crimea.
Why is the air quotes around camp, George?
I don't know. I mean, I think they're trying to imply that there's something
like a work camp,
a concentration camp. Berezhny, who was then 17, tried to refuse, but school officials said that they had legal documents certifying his parents' permission for him to travel. His parents told him they never signed any document and were unaware of the plan, he said. And then, there's a fearing repercussions, Berezhny agreed to go. Then some 600 other kids, including some as young as 7 years old, were also enrolled at the camp, and Lavrov was among them. Then months earlier, Lavrov's grandmother had died, and his mother was hospitalized for severe mental illness. He never knew his dad. So there's really nobody looking after this. This boy.
Russia is such an evil place, taking care of orphans, huh? Jeez.
That's right. At 16, he was living alone in his family house. Well, if you're in the UK or the United States or in Hungary, you can't just be 16 and living alone. I mean, that's just not, the authorities will not allow you to live alone at the age of 16. So somebody would have to take care of him. I mean, that's just automatic.
Or somebody has to be legally.
Somebody. Exactly. But if there's nobody who is acting as his guardian, then which would happen, in Hungary or anywhere else. If there's nobody who's acting as your guardian, legal guardian, then the government would just take care of you. They would just put you into some kind of a home until you reach the age of 18. I mean, that's just automatic. So I mean, at 16, he was living alone in his family house. Well, yeah, you know, that's not going to work anywhere.
When a local go back, because I want to interested what that last sentence was. When when a local collaborator, yeah.
Oh yeah, local collaborator, exactly. A local collaborator. You know, notice how so the Washington Post is entirely adopting the lingo of their Ukrainian minders. You know, oh yeah, local collaborator. Oh yeah, okay, local collaborator.
Local collaborator.
Yeah, collaborating scum. Hang him. Yeah, so Ukrainian children could not safely cross the battle lines back to Ukrainian controlled territory on their own, and were also banned from crossing borders from Russia into Belarus or Europe without an accompanying guardian. Yeah. That's kind of, what would you rather have them do? I mean, yeah, fine, you know, 11, 12-year-olds. Yeah, off you go. You know, hope you find your way to Kiev. As autumn 2022 gave way to winter, some children from areas of Ukraine still occupied by Russia were sent home. But children from liberated areas of Kherson and the northeast of Kharkiv region were moved to a smaller campsite in Russia. But again, I mean, as we read earlier, pending, you know, arrival of parents or guardians. I mean, they said that, well, they moved to a smaller campsite in Russia. But it would, you know, it's still a matter of, you know, when parents or guardians emerge, the Russians hand them over, as long as, you know, you've got the proper paperwork to show that you are the parent and guardian.
You know, one of the things I always find kind of curious in going through these articles is that, you know, George and I would take issue. Well, we did. I think both of us get confused about what is occupied. Okay,
right.
Because you know there are competing accusations of who's occupied. No, that's liberated territory. Well, that's not occupied. You see, it gets convoluted sometimes.
It gets very convoluted, but it's always very interesting that every time they mention Crimea, they always have occupied Crimea. Never once do they say occupied Kosovo, which it is occupied. They don't even say occupied West Bank. You know, that's you know, they don't put that in. So but they always get in occupied Crimea. They have to.
Yeah, and they never mention occupied Syria. Okay,
that's right, exactly. That's never. You know, they when it comes to Syria, they say U.S. forces stationed in Syria, suggests that they're legally. We're stationed here. This is. Then it says in Crimea, Berezhny and Lavrov were searching for a way out. By early this year, they were still stuck at camp when Russian officials sent them to the Crimean city of Kerch and enrolled them to study at a technological institute. Russian authorities, so that's not bad. I mean, you go to a technological institute. I mean, that's
well. I find it again extremely misleading. Tell us more about this camp.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, is there Sergeant Schultz there and Colonel Klink? Okay. I mean, who's there? Okay, I mean, or maybe it's just a dormitory. You know,
that's what it sounds like. Yeah.
But the fact that they don't give us any description tells me that it would be inconvenient to their narrative.
I mean, it sounds like a kind of a children's camp with children of different ages. I mean, you got 17-year-olds and 7-year-olds. You know, it's children's camp, so Russian authorities moved Lavrov's mother to a hospital in Crimea and told him they issued her a Russian passport. Now that's the mother that was in a mental hospital in Ukraine. So that, you know, again, you know, not exactly a savage cruelty. And again, they issued her a Russian passport. They said he should accept one too. He refused. Then in early summer, a fellow Ukrainian student's mother came to escort him out. With help from Save Ukraine, Berezhny's parents signed the power of attorney documents to let her take him. But documents the organization provided for Lavrov were refused due to complications over his mother's guardianship, despite her hospitalization. Well, again, this is a bureaucratic issue. I mean, if she's a mental hospital, we obviously don't know her condition, but you know, that he's still underage. So, as you know, we were talking earlier, Russian bureaucracy, a Russian legal system, they dot their I's and cross their T's. And if there's an issue as to who can sign off on him going to Ukraine with strangers, then that's what they cause problems. They said, well, the mother may not be mentally competent to sign off on it. And she may not even have signed off on it. She may have said no. I mean, we don't know what the mother said. So, because here the issue here is that some strangers said, well, we'll take you back to Ukraine, and the authorities said, no, you can't.
Well, yeah, this is not what, this is not, this is what happens in America, where, they have all these children come over the border. What I think the last number is they lost 95,000 of them. Okay. Right. Where are they? We don't really know. Okay. Yeah. But the Washington Post will never write an article about that, will they? Right. Okay. No. And so far, everyone, we have someone that becomes of legal age, decides his fate, and right. His wishes are granted. That's the drama so far of this story. Right.
Here. Exactly. And it says, his classmate's mother took the issue to a Russian control court in Crimea and was rejected. Okay, I mean, but again, that would be rejected in most kind of rules-based systems. They say, this person is not your relative, is not your legal guardian. She can't really make decisions for you and say, well, I'll take him across the border and that's it. So they had to leave without him. And then when he returned to school this fall, officials again tried to push Russian documents on him, he said, including a Russian version of his birth certificate, which he burned. He fled soon after, and then I think this is the end of the story. So, you read this story, and then you think, well, where's the war crime? I mean, I want to know about these war crimes. And I want to know what are you going to tell the ICC? I mean, they're going to say they're, what crimes are you alleging that Russia has committed? I mean, here are the people who were taken from as slaves, and they seem to have no legal guardian. They had no parents. They had no legal guardians. They were taken to safety rather than allow teenagers to roam around in a war zone. They were taken to safety. When parents or legal guardians emerged, they were allowed to return. So what's the war crime? What are you trying to allege?
Even more so when, again, this mother that had some kind of mental issues, they were very fastidious in saying, are you capable? Do you understand what you're doing? Because we have an underage person in our custody, and we cannot just frivolously agree to something. I mean, essentially, I think what's not said is that some doctor said, no, I don't think she's all there. Okay. And we can't just let these people leave like this. They don't mention it, but I assume that was what the problem was.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, if she had signed off on this, I don't see any reason why they would have. I mean, it's clear that this was a legal issue that these friends' parents wanted to take him back. And the authorities said no, because there was no one competent to sign off on it. I mean, that happens in any system. If there's somebody underage, then there has to be somebody competent who can sign off, before he's taken to another country, because then you've lost responsibility if you just take him to another country.
And then that would be the war crime.
Exactly. And then something happens to the boy, then you're on the hook for basically not allowing a legal guardian to make that decision.
Well, George, you remember, I think now it's like 20 years back when they the whole scuffle about adoptions of Russian children, which, my personal experience, I remember I was getting my passport renewed when they would allow me to have my passport renewed. I went into the consulate. It was full of people. I was there just to get a document, but these people were there to get adoption papers. And I don't want to go into great detail here, but I just thought, looking around, These people would never be allowed to adopt in America. Okay. That's why they came here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was basically selling children. And that came to an end after numerous outrageous stories of the treatment of Russian children that were adopted by Americans and neglected, forgotten, abandoned.
Some of them were just beaten.
Okay, so I mean that they quickly put that to an end. Of course, you know that was a really small snippet of Russiagate. Remember the Russian lawyer,
Right.
you know,
That's
trying
right.
to change the laws and all that.
That's right. Yeah, no,
They weaved it into that one too. Okay,
yes, yeah,
but
no,
you know,
no.
I don't know, George. I come away from this article is that you know Russia needs should get a human rights Nobel Prize. That's what I read from this.
Well, that's exactly it. We look at Gaza, where let's say 40% of the victims of Gaza, as a result of Israel's bombing campaign, have been children. That's 40%. So, since they're children, they're by definition innocents. I mean, that's it. You know, you know, you basically killed innocents. You know, you're going after Hamas, but you've killed at least 40%. Are innocents, and then if you look at the rest of them, the rest of 60%, let's say even if say 30%, if say 50% of those are innocents and 50% are all Hamas fighters, that means 70% is basically you kill 70% of innocents. That's a high tally that Israel is perpetrating. Yet Karim Khan can't bring himself to do it. He can make long, big speeches. But he can't bring himself to issue any arrest warrants or even start any investigations. I mean, he's just simply let me make another big speech, which will get a favorable coverage in the Guardian.
Again, George made it clear at the very top, which is always important, that Russia doesn't recognize their jurisdiction. Okay, and we've made many videos about it. Okay, but let's just hypothetical, George. Let's say Russia engages on this very specific area. I don't even think the prosecution would show up in discovery because the Russians, I'll tell you, they'll come with boatloads of documents, boatloads, okay?
Right.
And with all those little binders and everything else, and they can wade through it and you'll realize, yes, Russia is a very bureaucratic place, absolutely, and heavy paperwork, but that's how they think. They think in this, you know, this point, and they dot all their I's and cross all their T's. That's just the way they are. It is so tedious.
No, and this is a particularly complicated legal issue because let's say if you take an orphan, now before you can return an orphan, then somebody will have to prove that you are a legal guardian. And a court has appointed you a legal guardian, and that we can return this 11, 12-year-old child to your care. And if you can't prove that, and again, the Russians are sticklers for this, you can't show it just saying, oh, well, I'm the next door neighbor, and I know this child. That's not good enough. They're not going to release a child into the care of someone that we have no evidence that there's any real connection. You're right to bring up exactly the case of the migrants on the U.S. border, where pretty much, people come in and say, "Oh yeah, those are my children."
I'll take that one. Take that one.
Yeah, our children, and they don't even. Well, where are your papers to show that these are your children? Well, I don't have any papers. Okay, that's fine. They're children. You have no idea who these people are. They might be, they're going to pimp out these children, or they might be, child rapists or whatever. Oh yeah, fine. We'll release the children into your custody.
The Washington Post, they just have no self-reflection, do they? I mean, they really can't, and they have no sense of proportionality as well. I mean, again, they put enormous time and resources into essentially a non-story.
Yep.
But but camps were involved. Okay, that's what camps. Okay, I mean, and like I said, they don't describe what this camp is.
Exactly.
Okay. But that's the intentionality of omission all of the time.
And let's keep in mind, this is the best they've got. I mean, the Washington Post wouldn't have run with this story unless this is the best that they had. I mean, they go to the Ukrainian authorities, they say, give us the best you've got, the best witnesses that we can use to present our story about Putin is in legal jeopardy from the ICC. So give us the evidence. And the Ukrainian authorities then provided these boys. They said, well, that's not a terribly convincing. So that's the best they've got. Where's the war crime? That Karim Khan was so eager to rush in and issue his arrest warrants.
Yep, frivolous, but get used to it. It's going to keep happening. I've warned everyone. This conflict will come to an end in one form or another, but the consequences of it will go on for at least a generation, maybe two.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, everybody, that's our update on these poor abducted children behind Russia. Oh, in the ICC. It's a really dramatic story. They have to come up with a better one than this, George.
I think so. I think so.
All right, this is The Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. Come on, buddy, you're on cue. Today is Monday. That means tomorrow at 3 p.m., as George likes to say, he has his live stream. Exactly.
Please join me. Come with comments, criticisms, suggestions, ideas. And then think about little Buddy, because Buddy's got, I'm presenting my documents to the ICC. It's the tip jar. I've got a thick wad of documents about the state of the tip jar. So we don't want him doing that. So he'll be on the blower to Karim Khan any minute. So if you have a few bob in your pocket, whip them out, dunk them in his tip jar. That'll satisfy him for the time being. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can work on the technology, and above all, we can keep Buddy and Karim Khan separate. So remember, if you like The Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.